أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيد الخلق أجمعين أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين أما بعد فقد قال الله في كتابه المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. Respected Muslim brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we will be discussing the biography and the martyrdom of perhaps one of the most famous shuhada in all of Islamic history, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. Salamullahi alayhi. Now, before we dive into his biography, as always, we're going to do a brief introduction to discuss why this man's biography is important. So, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas is probably the most famous non-imam in the history of the madhab of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. As in, when we look at the figures of Islamic history, who we say famous, that includes, of course, the layman. If we ask the layman about Hamza, salamullahi alayhi, they probably will not know as much about him, or will not speak as much about him as they speak about Abu al-Fadl. If we ask them about Ja'far al-Tayyar, they will probably not know as much about him as they know about Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And by the way, lecture on the life of Ja'far al-Tayyar coming soon, inshallah. If we ask people about the companions of the Imams, the brothers of the Imams, they will undoubtedly not know as much about them as they know about Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. As in, one of the funniest polemics that we see the Mukhalifeen using, and this is perhaps one of the best demonstrations of their ignorance and their prejudice, is that they claim, for example, that Shi'ism is an Iranian experiment gone wrong. Is a product of the Iranian, of the Persian people, and that the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, the only reason why the Iranians hold them in high regard is because one of their ancestors was a Persian, an Iranian princess. So this can simply be refuted, very, very simply. If you go to Iran today and you ask people about Imam al-Sajjad, salamullahi alayh, any layman on the street probably won't be able to tell you much about his life. But if you ask them about Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, they'll tell you, oh, of course I know Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Everyone knows Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Despite the fact that Imam al-Sajjad is half Persian, half Iranian, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas is a full-blooded Arab. But for some reason, Arab and non-Arabs alike are obsessed with this man. They have fallen in love with this man. There is no separating him from their popular imagination. There is no separating him from chivalry, from courage, from bravery, from honor, and from dignity. Every single one of us wants to be like Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Every single one. Every single one of us, whenever we make mistakes or we slip and fall, the example that we look up to, the one that gives us hope, the one that, encourages us to keep going, is the example of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. How on earth did this happen? How on earth did this happen? That is what we will be dissecting today. Because Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, he died at age 34. He died when he was relatively young. And when it comes to his life, there's not too much recorded about his life, authentically recorded, other than the Battle of Karbala. Those few hours, those few days leading up to the battle, those few hours, in which the battle took place, and somehow, some way, he became immortal. Correct? He lives on in the hearts and minds of thousands of people, millions of people around the world. How on earth did this happen? Because if you say it's because his father is Ali, his brother is Hussein, that's completely irrelevant. Do you know why? Because Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, we have more historical data on him, and he is the son of Ali, he is the brother of Hussein, he's the brother of Imam al-Hasan. Heck, there was even a sect that claimed he was an Imam at one point. Rebellions were launched in his name. Yet if you ask people about Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, he was nowhere near as large as Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. How did he attain this status? How did he reach this position, which to this day, no one other than a Ma'soom can reach? You have people, we all remember when we were kids. I know this is true in the Iraqi community. I don't know if this is true in the non-Iraqi community. I know that the young Iraqi Shia, when they learn the story of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, they will ask their parents, is he an Imam? Was he Ma'soom? Because when you describe this man and his merits, you see that this man reached such a status, he literally left people confused. People were left confused in awe of this man. How on earth did he do it? What did he do? How did he attain this status? So today, inshallah, we will be dissecting his biography. And there are a few things to keep in mind. First of all, I am not a reciter of masa'ib. Many of you know I am, I read history. Talib. I'm going to present to you what the historical accounts tell you about this man. Whether or not that makes you cry is not on me. That is on you. Because the story of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, as we've said, is a very, very sad one. It's a very, very somber occasion. Correct? The story of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and the companions of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, and even the lovers of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, the people who didn't even make it to Karbala, who for some reason or another, they were just not there. But anyone who tied his rope to the caravan of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, it's all one great tragedy. Correct? So the story of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas does not require exaggeration in order to be sad. On the contrary, something that you will see in the Shia community today is there are people out there who are sinners, who are far from religion, who are far from the mosque. They don't pray, perhaps. Something happened to them and they were disconnected. But for some reason, the door of Abu Abdullah, the door they enter through, is through Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. They always come to the mosque during the 7th night of Muharram, and they are there commemorating Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. That is something powerful. That is something very, very powerful, my brothers and sisters. That is not something that needs to be exaggerated. That is not something that needs to be, lied about, in order to be sad, in order to be powerful. I remember there was a poem I once wrote, "Marvel at the man who, despite losing his arms, has been given the strength to pull millions of people around the world every year to Karbala." And you can try it out. You can try this out. Abu al-Fadl has been called Babul Hawa'ij for a reason. Is because when people understand him, when people seek to grow closer to Allah through their love of him, and they use him as their wasila, a path always opens. And the same goes for his mother. Okay? So with that being said, let us look at the biography of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas ibn Ali, as we said, he was 34 years of age when he was martyred at the Battle of Karbala. So what this means is that he was born in the year 26 after Hijrah. And it is popularly transmitted that he was born on the 4th of Sha'ban. And I unfortunately have not found a primary source that says he was born on the 4th of Sha'ban. But the fact that he was, born in Medina in the year 26 after Hijrah, and he was martyred on the 10th of Muharram in the year 61 after Hijrah at the year of 34, this is undisputed. This is well known. All the historians have agreed on this. All the Sahib al-Siyar, Ashab al-Akhbar have agreed on this. So Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, when we look at the beginning of his story, it begins with obviously his mother and father. And his father is more famous than needs to be mentioned. His father is Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salamullahi alayhi, who is a Hashemite, a Qurashi through and through. But the story of his mother is very interesting. There's a few reasons why. Number one, the story of his mother, Ummul Baneen. Ummul Baneen is a very, very popular figure in the popular imagination as well, much like her son. Ummul Baneen is commonly cited as one of the most powerful wasilas you can use, and stories are narrated about her. So Ummul Baneen, salamullahi alayha, although today we're not covering her biography, it would benefit us to mention a few simple facts about her life. So Ummul Baneen, salamullahi alayha, comes from a tribe known as Bani Kilab. Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, if you look back at his life, he was a man who married many women. He had many wives and he had many concubines. Right? So Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, who are his wives? His wives are Fatimah, bint Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa salamullahi alayha. His other wife is Umama bint al-As ibn Rabi', the granddaughter of Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. His other wife is Khawla, the woman of Bani Hanifa, who is the mother of Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah. His other wife is Asma bint Umais. And one of his other wives is the woman of Bani Talib. And then you have Ummul Baneen, salamullahi alayha. Ummul Baneen, it is narrated in Talib, which is a book that records the genealogy of Abi Talib. It is narrated that Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, said to his brother Aqil, who, as some of you may know, Aqil was an expert genealogist, and this made him quite dangerous. There's a story that says once Aqil and a friend of his decided it would be funny if they sat on the side of the road one day, one of the streets of Medina, and whenever someone would pass by, they would tell people what his mother or his father used to do in Jahiliyyah. They're like, oh, we know about you, we know what your grandmother used to do in Jahiliyyah, we know what she was employed as. And so this caused so much alarm among the people of Medina that they took him to Umar, and Umar is said to have kicked him out of Medina for a while. So this same Aqil ibn Abi Talib once came into the court of Muawiyah, and Muawiyah was teasing him. So Aqil simply snapped back at him. He said to him, Muawiyah, you want me to tell the people about your grandmother Hamama? And so Muawiyah said, Aqil, I'll give you however much money you want, just don't mention Hamama. So Aqil was an expert in Arab genealogy. He knew all the tribes, he knew who was descended from who, he knew who came from a good background, he knew who came from a bad background. So it is recorded that Ali salamullahi alayhi said to his brother, he said, Aqil, I want you to find me a woman who will give birth to a son who will be a warrior. The hadith, the narration quite literally says, Faris, that he will be a Faris, a knight, a cavalier. So he's basically telling him, he says, find me a woman who comes from a background of warriors, of soldiers. And so Aqil said to him, he said, well, I have a woman in mind. You want Ummul Baneen bint Hizam al-Kilabiyah. Question. Ummul Baneen, there's a story that is commonly narrated. It is commonly narrated that when Amir al-Mu'mineen married her, she said to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I wish, I would appreciate if you would grant it to me. I would like you to change my name. My name is Fatima. I would like you to change my name to something else because I don't want Hassan and Hussein to hear you calling me Fatima. And so they remember their mother, and then, they begin to cry because they remember their mom. So this narration, so Ali changes her name to Ummul Baneen. So this narration is very interesting because it's very popular. It's very well known. No doubt you've all heard it before. But I have been unable to locate any trace of it in the books of history. On the contrary, Tabari, Baladuri, Zubayr ibn Bakkar, al-Mufid, all the major historians simply give her name as Ummul Baneen. And Ummul Baneen was a name that the Arabs used to give their children. Correct? Someone asks us, how can that be her name? It's a kunya. Kunyas are acceptable names for women. One of the more famous ones is Kulthum, which is the name of one of the Prophet's daughters and the name of Imam Ali's daughter, and which is still a famous name in the Arab world today. So it is more likely that Ummul Baneen's name was Ummul Baneen. That is not her title, it is not her nickname, it is her actual name. طيب? So Ummul Baneen, salamullahi alayha, it is said that she was around the same age as Sayyidah Zainab, salamullahi alayha, when she married Amir al-Mu'mineen Abu al-Hasan, salamullahi alayhi. And so their eldest son, they had 4 sons, and historians dispute the order. The eldest son is al-Abbas. After al-Abbas was Abdullah. After Abdullah is Uthman, and after Uthman is Ja'far. There's a difference of opinion over who's older, Ja'far or Uthman. Interestingly, Iraqi poets and when they do eulogies, masa'ib for Ummul Baneen and al-Fadl Abbas, sometimes you will hear them call Abdullah on, or they will call Uthman on. So that was not their real name. in any case, Ummul Baneen, as we have mentioned, she comes from a tribe known as Bani Kilab, very very powerful tribe. In later history, they would migrate to Syria, and subhanallah, history would replay itself. They became like firmly Shia, and they would get into conflicts with like the local Sunni tribes like Banu Taghlib and their other neighbors. So, and I think there are some very famous Arab dynasties in the Middle East and North Africa that are descended from Bani Kilab, and Allah knows best. So Abu al-Fadl Abbas salamullahi alayhi was born in Medina. He was born in the year 26 after Hijrah. So, and he is the eldest of his four brothers, or his four half brothers. Abu al-Fadl Abbas has many names. The key to understanding this man is not to go year by year of his life. Rather, it is to go through his names and his titles. So first of all, what does the name al-Abbas mean? So many of you may know that al-Abbas, this name, it comes from the word Abbas, or as the Quran says, for example, Abasa wa tawalla. What does this verb mean? This verb, the root of this verb means to frown. It means to frown. So why would the Imam Ali name his son this name? So Abbas, it means the person who makes them frown. So this name is probably one of the coolest names in the classical Arabic language. Abbas, the one who makes them frown. Them is a reference to the enemy. You name your son Abbas because you're basically saying that my son, when the enemy sees him on the battlefield, they frown. And one has to wonder how Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi, he couldn't have chosen a more perfect name for this son of his in particular. So al-Abbas salamullahi alayhi, that is his name. That is how, he was named by his father. But he has other famous nicknames. One of them, his kunya, is Abu al-Fadl. Or, as the Iraqis in their vernacular like to call him, Abu Fadhil. So Abu al-Fadl, Fadl means goodness. It means, Sahib Fadl means, something good. طيب? So Abu al-Fadl salamullahi alayhi, when you look at his life, so why was he called Abu al-Fadl? It's because of his oldest son. His oldest son was named al-Fadl, and there are other reports that say, Fadl excellence. There are other reports that indicate that he had other sons, but only one of them survived. And subhanAllah, to this day, the descendants of Abu al-Fadl Abbas are around in the Muslim world. Abu al-Fadl Abbas, salamullahi alayhi, his other famous nickname is Qamar Bani Hashim. His other name, as-Saqqa, or as-Saqi, or Abu al-Qirba. Now, in order to understand Abu al-Fadl Abbas, we need to go over these names. So we already went over his famous kunya. Let's go over the second name, Qamar Bani Hashim. What is a Qamar? What is the Qamar? The Qamar is the moon. So when you call someone, Qamar or Gumar, it means you're calling them the moon because of their beauty. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa Abul Qasim Muhammad alayhi afdal salatu wassalam, he was often called the moon. Correct? Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi, there is a report in al-Isti'ab which says his face was like the moon. It means he was very handsome. His face was, a sign of Allah. An ayah of Allah in terms of his jamal and the way Allah created him. The reason why Abu al-Fadl was called Qamar Bani Hashim is because he was exceptionally handsome and physically attractive. There is a report, it is narrated by al-Qasim ibn al-Asbagh ibn Nubata. He says that there was a man from the tribe of Aban ibn Daram with a very black face who I knew to be very handsome and very light-skinned, very fair. I said to him, I almost didn't recognize you. So he replied, he said, I killed a young beardless man from the army of Hussein. Between his eyes was a mark of prostration. Since the night that I killed him, I have not slept without him coming to me and taking me by my clothes until he brings me to hell and pushes me into it. Then I scream, and there is no one left in the neighborhood who does not hear my scream. He said this murdered man was al-Abbas ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. Abu al-Faraj also narrates, he says that al-Abbas was a very handsome and beautiful man, and he was very tall. Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, when we read his physical description, he was more middle height. Rasulullah, some people, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some people narrate about him. They say that, when it comes to his height, Rasulullah, even if he went up to someone taller than him, he would look taller than that person. Or that person who's taller than him would be looking at him as though he was the taller one. Correct? Abu al-Fadl Abbas, unlike his father, who was of middle height, we would say, Abu al-Fadl was very tall. And this seems to be something he inherited from his mother's side of the family. He was so tall that some narrations say if he would ride a horse, his feet would touch the ground. Now, there are some scholars who have disputed this narration. They say this is an exaggeration. But I've seen a brother, he brought up something very important that we have to keep in mind. He said that back then horses were smaller. This is something that scientists, people who understand biology, they know that over time horses have been bred to be larger. So it's possible. Allahu A'lam. But in any case, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, he was called Qamar Bani Hashim because of his exceptional physical characteristics. And as the report describes, it said he had a mark of prostration between his eyes on his forehead. Meaning, not only was he a warrior, but Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was a very pious man. He was a worshipper of Allah. Correct? He was very, very God-fearing. And this is something we will cover, inshallah, towards the end of this lecture, how the Ahlul Bayt describe him as a scholar. Correct? In any case, this is how he earned his name, Qamar Bani Hashim. Now, if we want to know about his other names, Sahib al-Qirba and al-Saqqa or Saqi, we go into the accounts of the Battle of Karbala. When we look at Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas's role during the Battle of Karbala, we see that he is the hero. But a few questions come up. Number one, is it true that Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, lost both of his arms? Or is this an exaggeration? Is it true that Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was a fearsome fighter? Or is this simply an exaggeration? Is it true that he died while trying to retrieve water for the children of Hussein's camp? In order to answer these questions, we refer back to the books of history. The first major reference to Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas salamullahi alayh, in the tragedy of Karbala is narrated by Abu Mikhnaf from Humayd ibn Muslim. He says that Ibn Ziyad, la'inahullah, on the 7th day of Muharram, he sent a letter to the army of Umar ibn Sa'd. He said, stopping Hussein from entering Kufa is not enough. I order you to cut Hussein's camp off from water and let them die thirsty the same way that the chaste noble Khalifa Uthman ibn Affan was killed thirsty. And so Umar ibn Sa'd's army blocked off the water. So this was on the 7th. This is 3 days before the battle. So Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, salamullahi alayhi, Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, told him to take a group of soldiers. So he took with him 30 horsemen and 20 foot soldiers and told them, go bring us water. So his second in command, Abu al-Fadl's second in command, salamullahi alayhi, in this mission was a man by the name of Nafi' ibn Hilal. Nafi' ibn Hilal, some of you may recognize him from our previous discussions on Karbala. He's the man who on the 10th came out and recited the famous rijz, Ana Jamali, Ana ala dini Ali. He says, I am the Jamali man, I'm from that tribe, and I'm on the deen of Ali. And so one of Yazid's soldiers shouted back at him, Wa ana ala dini Uthman, and I'm on the deen of Uthman. So he retorted to him, no, you are on the deen of Shaitan. So this was the man who Abu al-Fadl took with him as his right-hand man for this mission. So they came up to Yazid's army, and the man who was in charge of that division guarding the water was Amr ibn Hajjaj Zubaydi, la'inahullah. So he said to the soldiers of Hussein's army, he said, what do you guys want? He said, we're here for water. He says, you guys can drink water, but you cannot take any water back to Hussein. So Imam al-Hussein's soldiers said, that's not going to work for us. So the men drew their swords. So the narration of Abu Mikhnaf tells us that 2 men held the entire division off while Hussein's army filled 20 water skins and took them back to the camp. Those 2 men were Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, salamullahi alayh, and Nafi' ibn Hilal. So this is something that's very interesting, is that a lot of people have this in their mind, that Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, he set out on the 10th of Muharram to get water for Sukaina and Ruqayya and the entire camp, and they argue that he tragically failed. He was killed. But this is not true, because as we can see 3 days before, when they began besieging Hussein's army, the man who went and brought the water back was Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, salamullahi alayhi. So he was in fact successful in this mission. Abu Mikhnaf further narrates, he says that when this is narrated from Abdullah ibn Shurayk, who is one of the men of Kufa. Interestingly, Abdullah ibn Shurayk was one of the allies of Mukhtar, and he lived to be a very, very old man. In any case, he narrates that when Shamr ibn al-Jawshan, la'inahullah, went to Ibn Ziyad with the letter of Umar ibn Sa'd, telling him about the situation, is like, listen, we've got Hussein where we want him. What do you want me to do? So Shimr went with a man by the name of Abdullah ibn Abi al-Muhallil, whose paternal aunt was Ummul Baneen. So Ummul Baneen was his amma. If you look at his lineage matches up very closely with Ummul Baneen's. So his full lineage is Abdullah ibn Abi al-Muhallil ibn Hizam ibn Khalid ibn Rabi'a ibn al-Wahid ibn Ka'b ibn Amr ibn Kilab. Ummul Baneen's lineage is Baneen bint Hizam ibn Khalid ibn Rabi'a ibn al-Wahid ibn Ka'b ibn Amr ibn Kilab. So this man is the nephew of Baneen, and he goes with a Shamr to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. And so they enter on Ibn Ziyad. He, Shamr talks about what, he brings what he has, and then he makes a request. He says, Aslah Allah al-Amir, may Allah make the governor prosperous. The sons of our sister are with Hussein. If you would consider it good, write that they be given a guarantee of safe conduct. Please do so. He said that he would be happy to do so. He ordered his secretary to write a guarantee of safe conduct for them. It was sent by Abdullah ibn Abi Muhallil with his Mawla, who was a slave, who was called Qazman. When the latter approached them, he called to them and said, here is a guarantee of safe conduct from you, that your maternal uncle has sent. The young men replied, give our greetings to our uncle. So this is al-Abbas and his brothers. Give our greetings to our uncle and tell him that we have no need for your guarantee of safe conduct. For God's guarantee of safe conduct is better than the guarantee of safe conduct of Ibn Sumayyah. This is also, as we said, this is also narrated by Abu Mikhnaf in the Maqtal of Abu Abdullah. So first, their cousin, by the way, this cousin of theirs was in Yazid's army fighting against them. You have al-Abbas, who's, with his brother, and then you have their cousin, who's related to their mother, fighting against them in Yazid's army at the Battle of Karbala. Subhanallah. Now, when it comes to this situation, this is something also very interesting. This is a letter sent by their cousin. Later, Abu Mikhnaf reports, he says on Thursday, on the 10th of Muharram, the day right before the battle, in the evening, Shamr went out. So first their cousin reached out, and now Shamr himself comes. So not only did they reject the offer once, they rejected it twice. Shamr went out and stood in front of the followers of Hussein and called out, where are our sister's sons? Al-Abbas, Ja'far, and Uthman, the sons of Ali, came forward and demanded, what is your business? What do you want? Shamr said, sons of my sister, you are given a guarantee of safe conduct. Al-Abbas and his brothers replied, may Allah curse you and curse the guarantee of safe conduct. If you are our uncle, how could you offer us a guarantee of safe conduct while the son of Rasulullah has no guarantee of safe conduct? Because subhanAllah, they rejected the sanctuary offered by Ibn Ziyad and Shamr alayhim la'inullah, and they said, we will serve as the guarantors of Hussein's safety. Salamullahi alayhi. In any case, Abu Mikhnaf reports, and this narration is interesting because it does not go back to his usual sources. Abu Mikhnaf usually quotes from, the people of Kufa, the people who were in Yazid's army, but this report goes back to Imam Zainul Abidin, salamullahi alayhi. And I think there's a version of it that is quoted by Muawiyah Duhani from Imam al-Baqir from Imam al-Sajjad. So he says, on the night before the 10th of Muharram, the night before the 10th, Imam al-Hussein gathered his followers and he addressed them and he gave them a speech that we will, inshallah, it deserves its own analysis when you discuss the Ansar of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. So he gathers them together and he says to them, guys, this is it. This is the situation. We're surrounded. There's nowhere to go. It's us and it's them. The water's been cut off, and tomorrow they are going to attack us. So I thank all of you, and I'm paraphrasing here, I thank all of you who have been with me up until now, but now your bay'ah is, I'm nullifying it. You are no longer bound by your pledge to me. You are free to leave me here. After all, it's me that they're here for. They're not here for any of you. If any of you wish to leave, take advantage of this night. You don't have to be ashamed. You're free to abandon me, and it is what it is. So, subhanAllah, this is something really interesting. I know that the discussion is about Abu al-Fadl, but if you would permit me, just a little moment to pause here. There's something I've noticed about Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, the entire journey from Medina to Mecca to Iraq, he gives everyone around him, do you want to leave? Leave. Do you want to go? Go. Multiple times. Why does he do this? It's because Abu Abdullah salamullah alayhi doesn't want anyone who is fully sincere, who is fully submitted to the will of Allah. I remember there was an example. It says that a man, Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, said to him, he said, do you have any debts? He said, yes. He says, I will not allow someone with debts to fight for me. As in, he's looking for excuses to save their lives, almost. And so, when Abu Abdullah made this proposal, he addressed his companions. The first people to respond, the first person to stand up and respond was Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, salamullah alayhi. The first person to stand up and say, Ya Abu Abdullah, we've come this far, we will never abandon you, was Abu al-Fadl. Correct? Now, the interesting thing is, when you look at this account, the account of what Abu al-Fadl said to Abu Abdullah, and I will quote this for you from Tabari's book so all of you can see it for yourselves. This is what Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and the Hashemites, the Bani Hashim, said to Abu Abdullah, and then also records the response of the Ansar. He says, his brothers and sons, the sons of his brother, and the two sons of Abdullah ibn Ja'far said, the two sons of Sayyidah Zainab, salamullah alayha, said, why should we do that? Is it in order to remain alive after you? May God never see us do that. Al-Abbas ibn Ali was the first of them to make this declaration. Then they declared this or something like it. Al-Hussein said, sons of Aqil, by losing Muslim, enough of your family has been killed, so go away as I have permitted you. They replied, what would the people say? That we deserted our sheikh, our leader, our cousins, and the best of uncles? And that we had not shot any arrows alongside them, and that we had not thrust any spears alongside them, and that we had not struck any swords alongside them, and that we do not know what they did? No, by God, we will not do that. Rather, we will offer for your safety our lives, property, and families. We will fight with you until we reach your destination. How abominable is life after you? And so the next day, Hussein's camp, the reports tell us they spent the entire night praying. They spent the entire night praying. And I remember it is narrated that I believe his name was Burayr, the man with who did the famous duel on the 10th of Muharram. He famously, the next morning, as they were getting ready for battle, he was telling jokes. And so someone told him, he said, what are you doing? This is not the time to be joking. He said, are you serious? In just a few short moments after, when this is over, we will meet our Hur al-Ain. This is it. This is martyrdom. There's nothing standing between us and our reward with Allah and His Messenger, except for this rabble that they call an army. And so the next day, Imam al-Hussein salamullah alayhi divided his forces. It is said that he had 32 horsemen and 40 foot soldiers. And he divided his army into the right flank, the left flank, and the center. And he gave his banner to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, to Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, salamullah alayhi. This is why he is called Hamil al-Liwa, because he was the standard bearer. So, when the battle begins, there are there's a recorded instance. We already showed you what he did on the 7th. On the 10th, it is narrated by Abu Mikhnaf that in the first hours of the battle, 4 of Imam al-Hussein's soldiers, and they are mentioned by name, they were fighting the army of the Kufans, Yazid's army. And so the enemy managed to surround them. They were cut off from the rest of the army, and they were disconnected from the main force. Al-Abbas rushed forth single-handedly, and he managed to break the siege. He managed to save them. And a narration says, I remember one historian says, he says, even after Abu al-Fadl opened a path for them to regroup, they stood right where they were, and they kept fighting until they died. And so you see that same bravery, that same bravado, that same, courage from a few nights before, he still got it. And so the narration of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas's martyrdom, this is where we finally address that question. Is the maqtal of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas the one that we hear every year? How much of it is true? What actually happened? Shaykh al-Mufid narrates the following, and this is confirmed. Part of it is confirmed by Tabari, and part of it is confirmed by ad-Daynawari in his Akhbar al-Tiwal. Narration says that Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas salamullahi alayhi saw the number of his family who had been killed. And at this point in the battle, may Allah have mercy on the Ansar were gone. There were no more Ansar. Bani Hashim, the first of Bani Hashim to offer himself was Ali ibn al-Hussein, salamullahi alayhi, who was Ali al-Akbar. He was the first of the Hashemites to be martyred. We know that Sayyidah Zainab's 2 sons had been martyred. And so Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas turns to his 3 brothers. He looks to Abdullah, Ja'far, and Uthman. And the narrations differ as to what he said to them. One narration says that he said to them, my brothers, step forward so that I may inherit you. So it's possible he said this. This could be a sign of Abu al-Fadl. Even in the heat of battle, he understood that there are fiqhi implications here. Meaning what? Meaning Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas knows that out of all of his brothers, out of his 4 brothers, he's the only one with children. So if he dies first, as opposed to dying last, this will mess up the inheritance. This is a possibility. We could say that Abu al-Fadl knew that he was going to die, that him and his brothers were going to die. The least he can do is make sure that their inheritance with his son goes smoothly. Because it is narrated that Umar al-Atraf, Ali's son, he disputed the inheritance of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas with Abu al-Fadl's son Ubaidullah. So is it possible that Abu al-Fadl was thinking about it? It's possible. Others say no. Abu al-Fadl, the reason why he said this to his brothers is he was making an excuse because he says, I want to be the last one with Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. I'm not afraid of dying, but someone has to be here with him to the end. Correct? So the narration says, he says, my brothers through my mother, go forward so that I may see that you have remained true to Allah and his apostle, for you have no children to defend. Nothing left in this dunya. Show them what you're made of. Abdullah, salamullahi alayhi, Abdullah ibn Amir al-Mu'mineen, who is sometimes referred to as Abu Bakr ibn Ali, advanced and fought fiercely. He exchanged blows with Hani ibn Shabib al-Hadrami, and Hani killed him. After him, Ja'far went forth, and Hani also killed him. Khawli ibn Yazid al-Asbahi, la'inahullah, went against Uthman, who had taken the place of his brother. He fired an arrow at him and brought him down. One of the Bani Danim attacked him while he was down and cut off his head. And so Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, just like that, had offered up his 3 younger brothers in defense of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. And it is narrated by Abu al-Faraj. He says that Ummul Baneen salamullahi alayha, after Karbala, you know what she would do? She would go out to the cemetery in Medina and she would cry and lament and speak about her sons who were martyred at Karbala. And her words were so heartbreaking that even Marwan ibn al-Hakam, la'natullahi alayh, this Nasibi enemy of the Ahlul Bayt from the very beginning, even he could not do anything but cry when he heard her words. The narration of Shaykh al-Mufid continues. He says, the group then launched an attack against al-Hussein salamullahi alayh and cut off his access to his camp. His thirst became severe, and he set off towards the dam, trying to reach the Euphrates. In front of him was his brother al-Abbas. Many people, they narrate this. Al-Hussein just let al-Abbas go on his own. The 2 brothers went out together. However, the cavalry of Ibn Sa'd la'inahullah blocked his route. Among these was a man from the Banu Danim. He said to the cavalry, "Woe upon you, prevent him from reaching the Furat. Don't let him get water." Then al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi cried out, "O Allah, I am thirsty." The Danami became angry and shot an arrow at him which lodged in his throat. Al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi pulled out the arrow and held his hand below his throat. Both his palms were filled with blood which he shook away. Then he said, "O Allah, I complain to you about what is being done to the son of the daughter of your Prophet." Then he returned to his position, while his thirst had become even more severe. Meanwhile, the people had surrounded al-Abbas and cut him off from Hussein. Single-handedly, he began to attack them until he was killed. May Allah have mercy on him. And the two men who took part in killing him were Zayd ibn Waraq al-Hanafi and Hakim ibn Tufayl al-Sundusi, after he had been covered with wounds and he could not move. Now, what do we get from this narration? We get from this narration that Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, salamullahi alayhi, we see he went out with his brother, we see he was cut off from his brother, and we see that he fought desperately to allow his brother to return to the tents. This is how Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was martyred. Now, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam confirmed this account. Abu Nasr al-Bukhari narrated from al-Mufaddal ibn Umar. Abi Nasr al-Bukhari narrated that al-Mufaddal ibn Umar narrated from Imam al-Sadiq. He said, "Our uncle al-Abbas had keen insight, and he was firm in faith, and he struggled alongside Abi Abdullah al-Husayn, and he endured hardship well, and he died as a martyr." And Shaykh al-Sadiq narrates perhaps what is the saddest and the most difficult narration of all. Shaykh al-Sadiq rahmatullahi alayhi narrates in his Amali as well as in his Khisal. He narrates this narration twice from Abi Hamza al-Thumali. He says, once Imam al-Sajjad, Imam Sayyid al-Abidin salamullahi alayhi, looked at Ubaidullah ibn al-Abbas ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. Remember, Ubaidullah was not at Karbala. He had been left behind in Medina, so he survived. He grew into adulthood and he had children, and the lineage of Abu al-Fadl lives on through him. But we remember when Imam al-Sajjad returned from Karbala, he would have still been quite young, correct? And we know how much Imam al-Sajjad loved his uncle Abbas. Narration says, he looked at Ubaidullah ibn al-Abbas ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, and he shed a tear. He began to cry. Then he said, "There was not a day more severe for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam than the day of Uhud. On that day, his uncle Hamza, salamullahi alayhi, Asadullah wa Asadu Rasulih, was killed. After that, the worst day was Mu'tah, wherein his cousin Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, salamullahi alayhi, Ja'far al-Tayyar, was killed. Then he alayhi salam said, 'But there is no day like the day of al-Husayn.'" "30,000 men came down on him, alleging they were from his nation, and that they were gaining Allah's proximity through his blood. He was by Allah reminding them of their duty, but they did not learn until they killed him treacherously, oppressively, and antagonistically. Then he said, 'May Allah have mercy on al-Abbas, for he was harmed and he suffered. He sacrificed himself for his brother until his arms were severed. Allahu Akbar. And so Allah exchanged them for 2 wings with which he flies with the angels in paradise, just as he did with Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. Surely al-Abbas will have a status with Allah on the day of resurrection that will be envied by all of the martyrs.'" So the person who asks, it says, "Is it true that Abu al-Fadl lost his arms?" We say, absolutely, it's true. This was confirmed by Imam al-Sajjad himself. And in place of those 2 arms, he was given 2 wings and a position among the shuhada. All of the shuhada will look to Abu al-Fadl on Yawm al-Qiyamah, and they will do ghibta. of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Say, what an amazing place you have earned, you have acquired. What an amazing reward you have acquired with Allah Azza wa Jal. Ibn Qawlawayh, and we will end, inshallah, with this in a few short words. Ibn Qawlawayh records with his chain to Abu Hamza al-Thumali. He says that Abu Abdullah, Imam al-Sadiq salamullahi alayhi, said, when you want to perform the ziyarah of the grave of al-Abbas ibn Ali, which is on the shores of the Euphrates River near the Ha'ir, stand at the door of the roof chamber and recite the following. So this is a ziyarah, a dua specifically for Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas when you visit his grave. And from this ziyarah, we're not just reading the ziyarah because we hope that you will do this ziyarah one day. Inshallah, you will. There are many people who go to ziyarah and they don't read this. Inshallah, you will be among those who read this. But I want you to look at the way the Ahlul Bayt describe this man, the great position that he acquired through his nobility, through his courage, through his bravery, through his love of Allah and his messenger. The dua says, the salam of Allah and the salam of his high-ranked angels, his prophets who were sent as messengers, his righteous slaves, all of the martyrs and the truthful ones, and all of the purified and blessed greetings be upon you at all times, O son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. I testify that you submitted and believed, and that you devoted yourself and remained loyal to the remainder of the Prophet ﷺ, who was sent as a messenger. Meaning al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi, the chosen grandson, the knowledgeable guide, the successor who announced the message of Allah, and the one who was oppressed and wronged. May Allah reward you on behalf of his messenger, the commander of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi, al-Hasan and al-Husayn alayhim afdal salatu wassalam, with the best of rewards, for you suffered in this world, but remain patient, expecting the reward from Allah. So how excellent is your final abode. May Allah's curse be upon those who killed you. May Allah's curse be upon those who ignored your rights and breached your sanctity. May Allah's curse be upon those who stood between you and the water of the Furat. I testify that you were killed unjustly, and verily Allah will fulfill that which He promised you. I have come to you, O son of Amir al-Mu'mineen, as your guest, while my heart has submitted to you. I follow you, and my support is prepared for you until Allah judges, and He is the best of judges. I am with you and only with you and not with your enemies. I believe in you and in your return, and I disbelieve in those who oppose you and killed you. May Allah kill the nation which killed you with their hands and their tongues. The ayat says, then enter, fall on the grave, and recite the following. Salam to you, O Allah's righteous slave, who is obedient to Allah, to His messenger, to Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi, and to al-Hasan and Husayn. Salam to you, and may Allah's mercy, blessing, and pleasure be upon you, your soul and your body. I testify and take Allah as witness that you died on the same path as the martyrs in the Battle of Badr who fought in the way of Allah, and you remained loyal to Him in fighting against His enemies, and that you strived hard in supporting His divine authorities. And you kept harm away from His loved ones. May Allah reward you with the best of rewards, the greatest rewards, the most increasing rewards, and with rewards which are above any reward which He has ever granted to those who remained loyal to their allegiance, who answered His call, and who obeyed His divine authorities. I testify that you strived hard with loyalty and put forth all of your efforts in the way of Allah. Therefore Allah resurrected you among the martyrs, joined your soul with the souls of the ever blissful ones, and gave you the most spacious place in His heavens, and the best of its chambers is your abode. And He elevated your remembrance in the highest of places, and raised you with the prophets, the truthful ones, the martyrs, the righteous ones, and excellent are these companions. I testify that you were not weakened, and you did not lose heart while facing your enemies. Verily, you died with insight about your affairs while following the righteous ones and the prophets. May Allah unite us with you, with His messenger, with His divine authorities in the dwelling of the humble ones. Verily, He is the most merciful of the merciful ones. And so there are a few takeaways from this dua, from this narration from Imam al-Sadiq. Number one, there is a version of it which says that the hurma of Islam, the sanctity of Islam, was violated when Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas died. We have reports that say the hurma of Islam is only violated when a scholar dies, not just a soldier, a scholar. Correct? Number two, this narration explicitly says that Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas died on the same path as the martyrs of Badr. His death alongside Abu Abdullah al-Hussein is the same as those Muslim soldiers who fought bravely and fell in battle at the Battle of Badr, defending Rasulullah, defending the religion of Islam. Correct? The third thing that we see is that we see Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, he suffered immensely for his Imam. And suffering for your Imams, it means he suffered for Rasulullah. He suffered for al-Muminoon, he suffered for al-Hasan as well as al-Hussein. And that is why he attained that status. In those few short hours in which he and his companions, he and the Ansar, were immortalized, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas showed the world what it means to be a Muslim. And I will end with this one musibah. It is narrated by Salama, salamullahi alayha, and Ibn Abbas, ta'ala alayhi, that after the Battle of Karbala, the 10th, 11th of Muharram, they saw Rasulullah in a dream. And Rasulullah, do you know what he looked like? He was covered in dust and his hair was disheveled. And so horrified, they asked him, said to him, Ya Rasulullah, what happened to you? How could this have happened to you? So he said to them, I just came back from seeing the death of my grandson Hussein and burying his companions. And so we know from these authentic reports that Rasulullah was there, that he saw the whole thing happen. And so one must wonder, when Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, when he fell, when he was martyred, we know that there are reports that indicate that the companions of Abu Abdullah, what do they say to Abu Abdullah in their last moments with him? They say, Ya Abu Abdullah, I can see Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa. I can see him beckoning me. I can see him offering me a drink, relieving me of my pain and relieving me of my thirst. And so one poet describes, he says, we must wonder, when Rasulullah came to Abu al-Fadl, how could he have thanked him for what he had done on that day? What would Rasulullah have said to Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas? Would he have offered Abu al-Fadl a drink? And there is no doubt that if he did, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, in one final statement of his chivalry and his dedication to his Imam, would have said, Ya Rasulullah, I will not drink before my master Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, بحق باب الحوائج بحق أبي الفضل العباس وبحق أمه Baneen, فرج عنا يا الله. اللهم بحق محمد وآل محمد, grant us ziyarah of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas salamullahi alayh, and of Sayyid al-Shuhada al-Hussein. Ya Allah بحق محمد وآله الأطهار, allow us to honor the legacy of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and his standard bearer Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Do not place any division, any barrier between us and him on Yawm al-Qiyamah. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.